Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for calling today's hearing on the ongoing pandemic response. During the first year of this pandemic, we all witnessed a colossal failure of leadership with fatal consequences. But in the past few months, we finally rounded a corner. With the passage of the American Rescue Plan, help is on the way. And after a year of grim milestones, including 500,000 dead, we finally have some new milestones worth celebrating, including over 100 million vaccine doses administered in the United States. These developments are promising, but we're not out of the woods yet. And one of the most important and logistically challenging steps on our path to normalcy is vaccination. We have a long road ahead before we reach herd immunity. And I'd like to ask a few questions about FEMA's role in helping us get there. Mr. Fenton, can you explain how FEMA plans to use funding from the American Rescue Plan to accelerate COVID vaccine rollout and get shots in arms?
We are doing a number of things to help with that. Why CDC and the operation are funding the vaccine supply, what we're doing is funding state and local government's capability to administer vaccines. So the $4.4 billion we've already provided out in the last 50 days is part of that. Second thing we're doing is we're sending federal personnel out there to help state and local governments. So actually people to administer vaccines. And to date, we've deployed roughly about 6,000 people out to help in that mission, whether it's Department of Defense, HHS, FEMA, the Forest Service, you name the federal agency, we have them lined up to help us in that mission, including DHS as a large is helping us out. And then lastly, what we're doing is setting up specific sites to provide large amounts of vaccine in large population areas where there's high social vulnerabilities to help to ensure equity and those most at risk are vaccinated.
Thank you. I'm hearing from my constituents every day that there's just not enough vaccine available in our community. I'm interested in seeing this change as quickly as possible. So I'm glad this administration has taken an all hands on deck approach. One component of FEMA's vaccine rollout support is the operation of mass vaccination sites, like the one at the United Center in Chicago. Mr. Fenton, what factors does FEMA consider and what stakeholders are consulted when selecting a site for a mass vaccination center like this one?
Well, we work very closely with CDC to look at their social vulnerability index score that looks at each county. And what we're looking at is a large population area. And if you take, for example, Illinois and Chicago specifically, we're looking at the number of people within the Chicago area, the social vulnerabilities there, but also recognizing that Black and Brown people have been impacted by COVID 3 times as much, hospitalized 2 times as much death, and to ensure that we're working with faith-based organizations, community-based organizations, and the state and local governments to target those areas and those individuals to ensure that we vaccinate them first. If you kind of look at the Illinois area, about 40% of the people that have been COVID positive and been hospitalized are from the Chicago area. About
Right.
45% have died are from the Chicago area. So therefore, we're focused in on that area and trying to build relationships to the community to ensure that if there's any vaccine hesitancy, we get them vaccinated.
Well, as I'm sure you're aware, there was a lot of confusion surrounding the opening of the United Center vaccination site last week. The site was originally supposed to open for all Illinois residents, and then it was later restricted to Chicago residents only. State, county, and local officials in Illinois reported that this decision was made based on updated guidance from FEMA. Can you briefly explain to the committee what guidance you originally provided on eligibility for sites and what changed in your updated guidance?
Yeah, so in all 18 sites that we have open right now across the country, each one of them are focused only on that county. The state gets an allocation for the whole state, and we are focused just on the vulnerable populations within each county. What had happened in Illinois is the state started going ahead and accepting registrations for the whole state. The first 40,000 open, and 87% of them were white Caucasians, and it was not the focus and the intention of why we set up that site. The site was set up for social vulnerable populations within the Chicago area to help those that have been most at risk. And so what we did was we stopped taking registrations for that system, and we got everyone together and said, let's focus on the most socially vulnerable, the most at-risk populations, and let's come up with a way to go ahead and do that. The intent of that site has always been, in all 18 sites that we've set up specifically for that, are for those vulnerable populations, those people most at risk.
Well, listen, I'm a nurse. I co-founded the Black Maternal Health Caucus. I am very concerned about deadly disparities. Obviously, I'm focused on doing a work with an emphasis on equity. However, we need to be clear about who is eligible for vaccines appointments at the outset and the availability of those appointments. And we shouldn't have people facing unnecessary confusion as they try to get their families vaccinated. I certainly hope that we can work together to make sure that folks in my district, which is suburban and rural and elsewhere, have access to life-saving vaccines, including from FEMA supported sites. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I yield back.